They called themselves the Hurin, the ones who remained. In the language of the earth, their name is a whisper lost in stone and bone. No history book mentions them, no cathedral bears their symbol, but there are places in the Carpathian Mountains, if you go deep enough into the roots of the world, where the soil exhales things older than memory, things that were never meant to be remembered. There was a time before the sun became a curse to them. They lived far beyond the edges of Rome's last maps, untouched by empire, too wild to be conquered, too quiet to be noticed. Their lives beat to the rhythm of crows and rivers. Children were born to the sound of wolves howling, and old men died beside firelight, their ashes scattered with reverence. They spoke in riddles, in dreams, in blessings that burned. Some Hurin believed they gave their children to the fire, the blood offerings in the caves, the silent gods of the underworld, the pact made beneath the stone altar generations ago. Before they fled downward, it began, as most forgotten tragedies do, with a choice. The Hurin were once surface dwellers, people of wind and forest, hunters, stargazers, weavers of bark and bone. They entered the caves with their wounded, their children, their dead gods folded into memory. They sang as they went, not in mourning, but in defiance, a hymn to silence. By the end, the air no longer tasted of pine but of charred flesh and loss. Of those who survived, the elders made a pact. They would never again walk in the world of sun and fire. They would descend. But then came the light-bearers. The men reported strange things, footprints that led nowhere, walls that bled condensation with a metallic scent, and tools fashioned from a bone that shimmered like opal. In 1901, he published a short memoir titled The Pale Ones Beneath. It was dismissed as opium-fueled madness. A cautionary tale, perhaps, or a hallucination from working too long in poor air. One man claimed he heard singing low, echoing, not in any known language. By the end of the week, half the crew refused to return. They said the dark breathed. They walked like us, but their skin was gray, almost translucent, and their eyes, God forgive me, they shone like moonstone, as if the darkness was a part of them. They came in cloaks of crimson and copper, their tongues drenched in prophecy, their eyes reflecting a sun too bright, too white. They did not march like invaders. They drifted like missionaries, carving sigils into bark, whispering of a new god. It's not one of roots and sky, but of flame and purity. At first, the Hurin listened. The light-bearers spoke of unity, of an eternal dawn where death would be no more. Others remembered the old ways. They resisted. They refused to burn and fear the light, protecting them or holding them. And so the light-bearers returned with iron. His wife reported seeing him wander into the forest at night. He was never seen again. The purge lasted 7 days. The forest bled. Ash choked the rivers. Stories say they followed an ancient mappa spiral carved into obsidian, gifted by something not human. And then they vanished from the surface of history, still warm to the touch. A braid of hair preserved in salt, and a whisper. One of them swore she heard it. But history, as you know, has cracks. In 1892, a Hungarian mining crew, digging for silver, broke through a series of tunnels under Bale Herculean. The government sealed the site. He called it the Mother Hall. And there, etched into the stone, were images and ancient murals, showing a time when the Hurons stood beneath the sun. And in the final panel, a descent. Figures walking into the mountain, leaving the fire above. And the sun turned on them. They told the press it was unstable, too dangerous. But one of the miners, Resek, never stopped talking. But within its pages, described something chilling. They were not ghosts. They were not beasts. He claimed they watched the miners from the tunnels. Silently, not with hatred, not with hunger. With fear they feared us. But why? What would make an entire people abandon the sky? The answer, as suggested, lies deeper. Beneath the tunnels. Past the bone doors, he wrote of a chamber, circular and smooth, with walls that pulsed like veins. The depiction was crude yet unmistakable, a great orb above, its rays drawn like spears. Beneath it, human figures melting, burning, writhing. But it was the last image that chilled him most. Figure not of flesh, not of bone, but of something vast crouching beneath the earth, with arms stretched like roots around the humans. Never found out. He went missing 6 weeks after his memoir's release, and so the story of the Huron was buried again. But not forgotten, because in 1938, a team of Polish spelunkers exploring a cave system near the same region discovered strange relics, a child's toy made of bone and silver wire. Don't bring the light. What happened to the Huron after their descent? What did they become in the belly of the earth? Are they myth? Are they memory? Or are they still there, watching, waiting, praying we never open the way back? They say the earth changes those who enter her willingly, not all at once, slowly, softly, like water carving stone. The Huron did not merely hide beneath the ground. They became the ground. In the first decades of their descent, they clung to memory, sang the old songs of forest winds, of firelight and starlight. The elders carved sunlight into cave walls, jagged, fading murals scratched with trembling hands. Children were named after rivers they would never see again. Some whispered it was a blessing from the mother stone and entity. They began to worship deep below, the protector drawn on the cave wall. Others believed it was punishment. They built homes from bone, root, and calcite. And they buried their dead in spirals, always spirals, echoing the ancient obsidian map that led them here. But memory fades, and light lies. Mothers taught infants to hum in specific tones, resonating with the tunnels like bats. Each family had their own frequency, their own chime. A song became a surname. Without the sun, the Huron's bodies began to shift, pale skin first, then translucent veins. Their eyes grew large, wide, and milky, adapted to total blackness. Light caused them pain, even torchlight, even dreams of light. By the second generation, the word sky had no meaning. By the third, the language had changed. The surface tongue was forbidden. The Huron became something else, ancient intelligence that dwelled in the molten bones of the earth. It was not a god. It did not love. It simply watched. Their society restructured. Above ground, strength meant survival. Below, it was stillness that mattered. The quiet ones, those who could sit in total silence for days, hearing the cave breathe, became leaders. Children were taught to navigate by echo. They used resin from surface trees, still preserved in ancestral bundles. They no longer hunted with spears. They hunted with vibration. They discovered that the deeper they went, the more alive the rock became. Not metaphorically, literally. The caves moved. Some went mad, others died. A few tried to return to the surface, clawing upward like beasts, but their lungs rejected the air. Their eyes burst in daylight. The tunnels shifted. Any remnant tools, carvings, stories were fed to the earth. Rituals were held to cleanse the eyes of newborns, sometimes with salt, sometimes with blood, and sometimes something moved within them. They called it Thon, the hunger that listens. It demanded rules. It was believed that harmony between voices ensured the child would be resonant, able to hear the cave's true voice. One rule above all: bring no fire. Being of pure thought, trapped in stone, whispering through limestone veins. One generation disobeyed, according to a preserved oral record passed down in rhythm taps and breath-coated chansa. Group of young hunters, curious about the forbidden past, relit a flame in the depths. What followed was a collapse, not of stone, of minds. The firelight awakened something in their brains, a scream, an overload, as if millennia of light-starved blood remembered pain all at once. Their bodies were found centuries later, fossilized near the upper chambers. The Huron called them sunborn, a slur, a warning, a curse. Stone tablets encoded with pulses felt rather than seen. Histories were sung in frequencies no surface ear could hear. There were no written words, only resonance. After that, all memory of the surface was purged, even birth changed. Couples no longer chose mates by desire, but by tone compatibility. Only one survived, a woman named Anna Vlock. She was found naked, her eyes swollen shut, whispering a single phrase again and again. Deformed infants were given to the stone. There was no crying, there was only silence, and then the tunnels began to speak. The walls vibrated without touch. The elders claimed it was the old one beneath them, older than gods, older than bones. Some say this being taught them how to survive without light. Others say it fed on them. In time, the Huron forgot they had ever been human. Their art was no longer drawn, but vibrated. And then, One year, no one knows how long ago their songs reached too deep. They opened something. They called it the mouth below. A fissure, blacker than black. Not a place, a presence. A hunger that had been asleep, and now was listening. Some tried to feed it, others tried to seal it. But all knew. If the surface ever found them again, a fire came once more, the mouth would open fully, and everything above would fall into it. Back on the surface in 1977, a group of Romanian cavers exploring an unmarked shaft near Mihidinci encountered a sudden cave-in. They are still here, can hear us when we breathe. There are places in the world where compasses die, where the wind does not blow, where sound bends strangely, and seems to return in whispers that were never yours. Scientists call them acoustic anomalies. Geologists blame magnetic fields, but locals, those who still tell stories by firelight, know better. They speak of places where the Hurons still breathe. The missing? In the early 1990s, Romanian authorities quietly began investigating a pattern of disappearances in the Carpathians. Hikers, cave explorers, even a small military unit during a training exercise vanished without a trace. But the reports shared one disturbing detail. Each group sent out a final transmission, barely audible, garbled with static. But forensic audio specialists recovered fragments. In every case, the same sound, a low-frequency hum, followed by clicking noises. It's not random, structured, rhythmic, like a language. The government denied everything. He claimed the recordings, when slowed and filtered, formed a repeating phrase in an unknown dialect. But one insider, a former intelligence translator named Dragos Ionel, leaked a classified report in 2002. Translated, it meant, "You are the fire. Stay above." He was found 3 days later, deep underground, far beyond where any child could survive. The child who heard too much in 2011, a boy named Leon Toma, disappeared near a tourist cave in Baia de Fear, unharmed, but different. When he finally did, his voice was monotone, his eyes unfocused. He described a place filled with singing stone, where people moved without sound, where light was forbidden, and names were carved into bones. Leon refused to speak for weeks, kept whispering one thing in his sleep: "They wear the faces of dust." Doctors diagnosed trauma. What one archaeologist recognized something else? Leon described details no outsider could know: the spiral graves, the hum language, the stone lattice chambers, all matching the myths of the Huron. Or memories. Was it possible? The boy carried something back. Bone structure, the blood that resonates in 2015. A genetics research team studying isolated mountain populations discovered a mutation in a small community near Orkova, a rare genetic trait. Hypersensitive auditory mapping, reduced melanin production, anomalous inner ear. The villagers claimed to be pure Carpathians. Instead of killing them, the elders exiled them upward. But one name stood out in their oral history: "They walk among us," Huronari, those who returned. Not all the Huron remained below. Some were cast out, those born too bright, too curious, too touched by the surface. And now, forgotten but not disconnected. Signal in 2019, seismic monitors across Romania detected a low, repeating vibration deep beneath the earth. At first, it was dismissed as tectonic activity, but then it began to repeat. Every 13 days, same pitch, same pulse. Geophysicists confirmed it was not natural. A pattern. A message. Translated through frequency-to-symbol algorithms, it formed a chilling phrase: "The fire has returned. The mouth is stirring." Was it a warning or a call? The caves that breathed back new cave systems continued to be discovered across Eastern Europe. But some explorers, those who return, report something strange. Passages that weren't there before, walls that seem to shift overnight, most disturbingly, echoes that do not match the original sound. If you say your name into the dark, the echo returns with a different word. One explorer, a British geologist named Sarah Cleaves, reported this in her final journal. "I said my name aloud. It came back, not Sarah, but Sunborn. And then the lights went out. She was never found. Only her journal, buried beneath a small pile of stones, carefully arranged in a spiral. The line between myth and truth has never been clear. But now it's vibrating, and someone or something deep below is still listening. The mouth beneath the earth was never meant to open. It was sealed by silence, by darkness, by fear passed down like blood. But humans forget. We are drawn to fire because it warms us, because it blinds us, because we believe we are the masters of light. And so, one day, we brought the flame back. 1. The expedition. In 2022, it's an international research team funded by a private energy conglomerate officially looking for subterranean geothermal activity, opened a shaft near the southern edge of the Carpathians. They called it Project Emberlight. AI algorithms to trace ancient lava tubes. They used sonar, thermal scans. But what they found was not a lava tube. It was a door, a perfectly circular passage, too smooth to be natural, too deep to be Roman, Celtic, or Dacian. Carved inwards into nothing. The team installed lights, cameras, generators, and on the 7th day, they stepped in. That was the last signal the surface received. 2. The footage 2 months later, a fragment of corrupted footage leaked onto the dark web, believed to be from one of the Emberlight body cams. In the footage, the crew descends into a vast chamber, walls pulsing with condensation. One whispers, "It's like the walls are breathing." Then silence. In a distant hum, low, familiar, too perfect to be random. Then comes the voice, not over the radio, but inside the audio itself, layered into the silence. A voice without lungs, without form, but unmistakably human. It says, "You lit the sky. Now we light the deep." 3. The resurgence. Weeks after the footage appeared, seismic anomalies erupted across Eastern Europe. Caves collapsed, rivers shifted course. People began to hear humming in their walls. Animals fled forests en masse. And in some places, a mining town in Serbia reported resonance sickness entire, households vomiting, weeping, or speaking in tongues when exposed to low-frequency vibrations. And then came the disappearances. Again, but this time not in the mountains. In cities, children vanishing in the night. Elderly found whispering spiral chants. Concrete foundations cracking from within, as if something was pushing upward. 4. The return. One witness saw a geologist who fled the Emberlight collapse describe something impossible, a chamber so deep it had stars on its ceiling, but they moved with thought, not light. In its center, a figure, not alive, not dead, not human. Something preserved in stillness, surrounded by kneeling, eyeless shapes humming in unison. He said, it wasn't a god. It was a memory, kept alive by those who refused to forget pain. The Huron had not just hidden. They had been waiting, changing, becoming the echo of what we once were before fire, before empire, before we thought we owned the earth. And now the flame we brought down has reached the old blood. It is awakening. It's not in caves, but in us. 5. The warning. This is not a story. It is a map of caution. There are tribes beneath our feet whose names were never meant to be spoken. There are bones that hum when we sleep. And there is a silence deeper than death, waiting for the world to grow loud enough to break it. And it's listening now, because we made the same mistake twice. We believed the past stays buried. We believed the sky was ours alone. But they remember the sky. They remember the fire. And now, as it burns again, they remember us. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this descent into forgotten memory and buried blood, like and subscribe for more. Until next time, listen closely. The past doesn't stay silent forever.